This week, we start out things with talk over a roll and some coffee. If we were only 20 years younger, it might be beer and wings, but that situation doesn't exist. Also, preparations for winter for everyone. And in the second half, the way we feed cattle, then and now. This is the Rural Reflections Podcast. Welcome to the Rural Reflections Podcast, co-hosted by Dave Nelson in Carrington, North Dakota, and me, Grant Nelson, here at the studios of Thief River Falls Radio. Good morning, Dave, and hello.
Morning, Grant.
You know, I think we should start it off with a little coffee and roll talk before we get to the main subject in the second half. So let's talk a little bit about family, a little bit about projects. How's everything going out there for both of those for you?
Well, yesterday was a minor project day, I guess. I did a couple things that I've been waiting to do. It was things I should have probably done before, but, haven't gotten them done. But it looks like waiting was a good thing because next week is supposed to warm up here. We're supposed to see some 50s again pretty much for the week.
Boy, that'd be good. We're talking somewhere in the 40s for us next week, but we'll take it. I mean, really, we've been probably a 20-degree deficit from what the average temp is in our area for the last, week and a half or two? So, and my projects around home have been going pretty well myself. I've got a few little things left to do, some optional oil changes, although those same vehicles will have to have a little seafoam, just a little seafoam. I think it's supposed to be an ounce per 5 gallons. It's usually about half and half when I put it away for the winter, and then I put battery maintainers on everything and pick it up in the springtime. And, in my old younger days, I always made sure that everything oil changed and everything like that. Now, a lot of times I leave it till the spring. I figure it's not really going to hurt anything. So when it's getting close like this, I kind of cut things a little bit short. Well,
and if it warms up, you may change your mind.
I may have to go out and mow lawn again.
You might have to. I told Mary that we might have to pick up leaves again.
That's the truth. I mean, there has been quite a few leaves fall down now, like last week or so when we got some winds here. There was a whole nother grouping of leaves that fell on top of the small crust of probably 3 inches of snow here. And it just didn't seem possible to go out and rake on top of the snow. Not that it would have mattered. I don't think I've ever raked a leaf in my life. Even for the short period of time when I lived in town, I just couldn't make myself do it.
Well, it's so easy we have a mower and a bagger, and it's so easy to, if you catch it before they get grown down to the ground and stuff, just go and pretend you're mowing, pick up the leaves and go dump them somewhere.
It sounds like kind of a fun thing to do. Do you ever find yourself doing a little recreational leaf raking or leaf blowing?
That's what it all is, yes.
That's good to hear. Also, that cupola I told you about last week, still sitting in the same position it was last week. Nothing new has been done with it. All it really needs is a 2x6 put across the bottom, and then it needs to be stored. But I don't know. It seems like when it gets cold like this, even the smallest tasks seem almost insurmountable unless they have to be done in the name of sustenance of life.
Well, and you've done the most fun part.
Yeah.
Procuring stuff for a project is always the fun part.
Yeah.
Doing it is the least fun. And then when it is done, then that's the most fun. But for starters, just getting the stuff is the big deal.
Yeah, sourcing is huge. That's the most fun part because you want to see, that's when you're really doing the designing as you go along. And also you're trying to say to yourself, okay, I don't want to spend too much money. So you're maybe being a little bit clever in some of your materials, whereas there's other things that really count, particularly if they're structural, where you're going all the way and you're going to get the best you possibly can because if it all falls down to the ground, it's really not that great. Even if it was a fun project, if it all comes crashing down, it's all for naught.
Yeah, that's a huge embarrassment then if it falls down. So you have to overbuild everything. I've overbuilt a few things around here and then had a carpenter come in and do something later. And they always wonder who in the world put all these extra nails and all these extra boards in places and stuff like that when they're in here. So, you got to overdo it to make it right.
One of those, why did they use 10-penny nails on the trim work moments, right?
Yeah, something like that. You just want to make sure it doesn't go anywhere, So.
Well, I've always said the same thing because, I'm not an engineer, so I don't necessarily know how to put everything together in the correct angle. So I use extra weld, extra screws, and extra nails.
Yeah, it's just one of those things you have to do.
I always think glue is cheap, so use plenty of it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, and, it's when you see a board that after a while the nails have loosened on and stuff, you never can trust them, So a little extra glue goes a long ways to holding things together. Even if you miss a nail or two, the glue will take care of it.
I'll tell you one thing, and nobody knows this except I'm telling you right now and everybody listening, I guess. When I have a carpenter over, if they've ever done work at our place and they've used nails on everything, I go around after they've left and I run screws into everything where they put nails. 1 or 2 screws just to be on the safe side. And that tells you a little bit about where I'm coming from.
Well, and screws are so nice because you're not beating on things to do it. You just turn them in, and the boards don't move while you're trying to nail it and stuff. So there's something to be said for screwing things together.
Sure is. Now, in the next half of our segment here in the Rural Reflections podcast, we're going to talk about feeding cattle during the winter time. We're going to take a break. We're going to do my online column, and then we'll be right back. I'm Grant Nelson. This is Rural Reflections. Now, this is not another cat story. It is a story about animals, which includes cats. It's a fine line, maybe, but it counts. We're pretty well staffed with cats. I like to call them staff, like they're on a payroll. I also like to retire to my chair and call out, I need my entourage, then call out the names of our cats. I guess I've humanized them, which is not always a great idea. We're not just cat people. We are equal opportunity lovers of all animals. Now, as we prepare for another winter, high priority is given to any outdoor animals. We don't feed the birds during summer. However, we ramp up bird feeding operations in September. We also start providing water for the birds. In the winter, we keep a large bowl of heated water so everyone can get a drink. All animals need food. However, they need water even more. Also, it's understood that any water or food put out for one specific group of animals will also be enjoyed by the ever-present raccoons. Now, the cat compound protocol has been pretty well established over the years. I try to observe the workings each year and make it a little bit better. This year, we're using several different shelters for our current batch of strays. All of the shelters are located in an open porch, so they're protected from most wind and precipitation, but not cold temperatures. The first structure is the wood cat shed that blocks any wind that comes in and has an access door downwind. Next structure, made of 4 straw bales stacked together with about a 2-foot square interior opening. There's 2 large pet pillows inside the bales. Next, we have 2 insulated and heated commercial pet shelters. These are made by K&H Pet Products, and they work really well. These are preferred by the cats. Now, there's a large rug on the ground level with a food dish on it and a heated pillow upon which they can sit while they eat. The heated water dish does not share a space on the rug because the water sometimes gets splashed around just a little bit. These preparations are for the benefit of stray cats. However, they give Lisa and me peace of mind. I think it'd be difficult to be warm and happy knowing that we had not at least tried to help the outdoor animals. The smaller and more vulnerable a being, the more protection it needs. The average adult human has resources. These are supposed to be shared. I like the Bible verse from Matthew 25:40, which says, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these, brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." After you hear that, It's hard to ignore a stray cat, a dog running scared down a road, or refuse help to any animal. I'm Grant Nelson. This is Rural Reflections. Welcome to the second half of the Rural Reflections podcast. Dave Nelson's in Carrington, North Dakota. I'm Grant Nelson here in Thief River Falls, Minnesota. Dave, before we cut to our main topic, I was just going to check and see any harvest yet going on out there, any sunflowers left or anything like that?
I'm sure there's something here and there, but there's so little left. It got done really fast, and I'd say we're 99.5% done around here. Maybe somebody's got something that's a little late that they want to do, but it's all but done.
Good. Glad to hear that. You know, around here, we had some sunflowers, and we're hearing that they're maybe not as good a quality as they should have been. Maybe didn't fill as well as they should have been. So that might be a good thing for cattle farmers in a way, that the fellas out there or the gals out there who've been baling CRP ground might be able to take some of those sunflowers, grind them in, and put a little bit of molasses in there and maybe a little oats, whatever, and make a nice ration for their cattle. I thought we should talk a little bit about feeding cattle during the winter. Now, my own experiences, I always kept things pretty basic, you know, bale rings and bale feeders. But even bale feeders, I've seen some, especially those guys out in North Dakota and South Dakota. I'll tell you what, those farmers are geniuses. They come up with all kinds of good things. And I've seen one trailer where it has like a spring-loaded sides, where you put the bales in there, then you put the sides on, and the sides will kind of shrink in on the bale as they get eaten, so you don't get very much waste. Have you ever seen something like that?
Don't know if I've seen that. Is that like on a hay rack kind of a feeder then?
Yep.
Yeah, I may have seen them before, but yeah, there's all kinds of ways of doing it, and all kinds of things they feed them. This spring, as combining last year's crop was finishing up, farmers were clamoring for corn stalks, and they were trying to bale whoever's corn stalks they could get this spring, because they were expecting there wasn't going to be anything this fall, which they're pretty much right. There wasn't much. And so there was a lot of late spring baling going on, and a lot of, I'd say, pretty ugly looking corn stalks, but a lot of corn stalks. It wasn't wet, you know, over winter really. So the stalks, you know, brightened up as they went through the combine and stuff like that. So it was terrible, but they look kind of ugly. But they've had some real good success with baling everything that's out there, and then getting some of these, you know, additional seeds that come from ethanol plants and that kind of stuff. They're afraid there's going to be a shortage of distillers' grains too, but from what I'm hearing, I don't think there will be. So, yeah, they're blending all kinds of things, and with the advent of these big vertical auger mixers, I mean, they could make a really pretty good-looking feed out of some stuff that's not all great.
Back in the old days when we had those grinder mixers, I mean, you had to put a little bit of hay in at a time, and then other feed stuffs like you're talking about, dried distiller's grain or beet pulp or whatever you wanted to put in there. But yeah, I've seen some of those bigger ones, and you can put pretty much everything in kind of whole and just let her buck. Yeah,
I know. It's amazing how those things work. I when I look at one of them with the sides all closed, it's like, there must be something mysterious inside there, you know? And, but then when you get a look at it, it's just a couple of big, heavy augers on some heavy bearings with big gearboxes underneath them, and they're just turning and working it and grinding it back together, and comes out looking real good.
I'm always amazed at how heavy some of that stuff is built. Like when you're talking about that big heavy duty augers, big pillow block bearings, and lots of power, and it makes it into something that's pretty palatable. And I know you were talking about the dried distiller's grain. We're thinking there wasn't going to be enough of that because there had been a reduction in the use of ethanol just because of COVID and people not driving as much and that sort of thing. But it sounds like there is going to be some out there, huh?
Yeah, it sounds like it. I guess there's corn in storage yet, and I don't know, ethanol plants are still going. So I don't know what it is, but I've talked to several people, and they figure they're going to get some, and some people have already stored over over the summer, and that too. So our one of the dairy that's here, they use pretty much all North Dakota feedstuffs, and they have flax meal, I believe it is, sunflower hulls, distillers grains, beet pulp. I can't remember what it is. There's 7 things that they source for their feed mixture, and then they have a base that comes from people we know in Minnesota, I guess. So anyway, they're making feed for the cattle, and looks like things are going to go okay this winter.
Sounds a little bit like cookie mix or granola. I remember when we used to raise up little calves, we had corn, oats, and barley put together. And every once in a while, if I was feeding them, I was a little bit hungry. I was like, maybe I should take a handful of that. Getting back to the theme of feeding cattle during the winter, I wonder if anybody out there has fed hay with the narrow front M with the F10 loader in the middle of winter. That was quite an experience.
Well, if they have, they're probably pretty old right now. But most of them are wide fronts yet. There's still a lot of old M's that are out there for, hobby type things and light duty use around farms, but I'd say not too many people have used that narrow front version.
And if they have, they've probably been glad to move on to something different. Dave, you got anything else for us this week?
I'm just looking towards a nice week. Sounds like the weather's going to warm up, so hope to enjoy the nice weather.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Dave. There he is, Dave Nelson in Carrington, North Dakota, co-host, along with myself, Grant Nelson, here at the studios of Thief River Falls Radio for the Rural Reflections podcast.